Hello, book lovers and English learners. Welcome to Lydie's Book Club podcast, your weekly dose of reading in English. I'm Lydie Bureau. I'm an English teacher in France and also the founder of Lydie's Book Club, a book club for learners of English and non-native English speakers who want to maintain their fluency. In this book club, I host live readings and discussion workshops on adaptations of classics of literature and contemporary novels in their original text. The book club mainly focuses on female writers' work. So every 2 months, we read and explore a different book from level B2. So that's upper intermediate up to C1 advanced level in English. And also we read original text, which is more appropriate for advanced speakers. So for our May and June book pick, we've decided to read one of the most fascinating novels of the 19th century. I named Middlemarch by George Eliot. So we're not going to read the original text, but the B2 upper intermediate adaptation of the novel by Macmillan Readers Collection. So I can show you here the original text is about 800 pages. It's a very long book. So it didn't make sense to read the original text, or it would be a very long process. Um, and I think that it will be more meaningful for you to read the B2, especially if you don't really know about George Eliot or the story, if you haven't read it in your native language. And reading 19th century English is not really easy. She's very knowledgeable. Well, George Eliot is very knowledgeable in many different subjects in this novel, and I think it can be difficult. This book has been characterized or has been criticized perhaps for the topics and the difficulties in following certain conversation, especially when she talks about science and the medical profession and the land management as well. They're very specific topics, and it's harder to grasp if you're not a literature teacher or a student studying English literature. It's not the point of this book club, and the point here is to give you a little gist of what this book is about. So that's the reason why I think that these graded readers are amazing, because to be honest, whether you are a non-native speaker or well learning English, or whether if it's your first language, I don't think that native speakers find George Eliot very easy either. It's 19th century English, and I don't think that's a language that's a level that all people speaking native English, well, all native speakers of English can easily understand either as well. So that's why I think that these adaptations can easily be read, well, can be, yeah, easily read by native speakers as well, especially young readers, maybe, or people who are just not used to read. I think it can be a good start. And if you're really into the story, you want more about the story, then of course, by all means, get into this because it's just a joy to read, except some passages. But to be fair, don't feel like reading an adaptation is not going to be the right thing to do, whatever. You just do what's best for you. And um, actually, I enjoy reading these books for you who are listening and or watching this video. And I hope that actually this will be an entry point for a further reading of the novel when you will feel uh, up to it and confident to read it. But in the meantime, let's enjoy a nice and easy read. It's nice to have easy stuff sometimes, and this way have a better understanding of the context and the characters, especially because there are so many characters in the novel. It's not easy to know who are the main characters sometimes. So here you really have a condensed version, and it will help you to really focus on the main characters and not get derailed by the other characters, secondary characters. So that's what I wanted to say about the reason behind this choice of adaptation. And I haven't read it. I'm going to discover the text with you while when I will start reading it. And I hope that's a good adaptation. We'll see. But if you don't know anything about Middlemarch or George Eliot, I invite you to listen to the podcast episode 32. So on this YouTube channel, it is available, here on this YouTube channel, and also on Spotify if you prefer to listen to the podcast. So today is our first guided reading session of Middlemarch, and we're going to read chapters 1 to 4. So if you want to attend this, our next guided reading session with me on Zoom, you just need to subscribe to the book club. You've got the link in the description. It will be the best way for you to improve your reading and comprehension skills in English, because you'll get the chance to ask me any questions before, during, and after the reading. Also, this Saturday, 17th of May, I will host the first online discussion workshop to talk about these chapters 1 to 4. So if you want to participate in the discussion, you just subscribe to the book club as well, sorry. And you also find the link in the description. So joining the discussion workshop will definitely be the best place for you to build up your confidence in English, get motivated to read more, and help you become more fluent. And of course, meet other members of the book club and be part of the community. Right, so let's get started. So let me show you a little bit about the inside of this book. So you've got here the first page. Here you've got the content here. So we're going to read the first 4 chapters today. So I hope you have a glass of water or a cup of tea with you. I just have a glass of water because my tea was already cold. So I'm just going to read water. Anyway, so here is a little bit about the author and about the story, which is always a nice way to get more information. I always love to read the introduction of either the adaptations or the original text, especially here in this close-bound edition. Here you've got the different books. So the book is divided in eight books. And you've got here the introduction, where you can see a lot of marking here, a lot of annotations. And so you've got here a note on the text, and then you've got the beginning of the novel here, a printed version of the first edition, and here the prelude and the beginning of the book, basically. And here, book one, Miss Brooke, which is slightly different. And here, chapter one. Yeah. So, and at the beginning of every chapter, there is a quote. Remember. A quote that have references, but sometimes there isn't any. So I guess this is perhaps our own poetry or our own quotes, perhaps, not sure. Yeah, here. So of course, in the introduction, they give away some elements of the plot. But to be honest, I don't really mind having these information. And when I reread the introduction afterwards, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. So, and also it helps you get into the context of the book, especially when they're quite complex like this one. So, I would suggest you to maybe listen to the podcast introducing you to George Eliot, the podcast that is now available on my YouTube channel, to get a better idea of what the book is about. That will help a lot, definitely. And then listen to the reading. But if you already know about the book, then let's go. So, Two Sisters. So in the adaptations of the novel, the titles are slightly different. So we've got here 22 chapters in this adaptation, and the editor has changed what has made up the titles of each chapter, which is a nice way as well, a different way to divide the story, of course. Right, Two Sisters. Dorothea, dear, why don't you stop working for a minute? Celia asked her eldest sister when they were sitting together one afternoon. You know that your eyes are not strong, and you have been drawing those plans for over an hour. But they are for Sir James. I must finish them, Dorothea replied. I'm so glad that he asked me to make the plans for the new cottages in Freshitt village. I want to show him how well I can do it. Celia sighed. Then she said, There is something that I'd like to do if you're not too busy. What is it, dear? Dorothea asked. Is anything wrong? No, of course not. But I thought we could look at Mamma's jewels, Celia replied. You have the key to her jewelry box in your desk. Don't you remember? Our uncle gave us the jewels exactly 6 months ago, and we still haven't looked at them. Dorothea looked at her sister in surprise. Why do you want to see them? She asked. We don't need to see Mamma's jewels to be reminded of her, Celia. Celia blushed, and she turned her pretty face away. I was wondering if we could wear them sometimes, she said quietly, to show that we haven't forgotten Mamma. And our uncle is having guests for dinner tonight. As you know, one of them is Sir James Chatham. We should try to look our best. Dorothea opened her beautiful eyes very wide. I see. I didn't know that you wanted to wear the jewels, she said with a smile. She put down her pencil and stood up, then walked across the room to her desk and took out the key. She picked up the beautiful wooden jewelry box and carried it carefully across the room. There you are, Celia, Dorothea said, putting the big box on the table and unlocking it. Soon the table was covered with sparkling jewels. Dorothea picked up a beautiful gold necklace set with purple amethysts. Amethysts. Amethyst. This will suit you, dear, she said to her sister. Let me put it on for you. So amethyst is a type of gem. Celia looked at herself in the mirror. The purple juice shone with shone with a clear light against the gold. Yes, I shall wear this necklace tonight, Celia said. But what about you, Dorothea? You must wear something pretty too. Look, these pearls. Look, these pearls do not shine so much, but they are very lovely. In the sense that they don't shine as well as the other one that I'm wearing, but they're still pretty. Dorothea shook her head and opened a smaller box. Inside was a ring set with emeralds and diamonds, and there was a bracelet with the same stones too. At that moment, the sun came out and shone on the bright jewels. They are like green fire, Dorothea exclaimed. She put on the ring and then took it off quickly. I shall keep this ring and the bracelet, but I shall not wear them, she said. But how can I wear jewels when you don't? Celia cried. Because we are very different, my dear, Dorothea said kindly. I can't help thinking of the poor people who had to dig these jewels out of the ground, and I like to dress plainly. While women think only of their beauty, no one will ever praise their minds. The two sisters had been orphans, but for more, had been orphans for more than 7 years. Their uncle, Mr. Brooke, who had never married, was their guardian. He had sent his nieces to live with good families in England and Switzerland. There, they had been taught by governesses until their uncle decided that they were old enough to live with him at Tipton Manor. Mr. Brooke was very fond of Dorothea and Celia, and although he knew very little about women, he was happy to look after his nieces. Both girls had inherited a little money from their parents. As Dorothea was the eldest sister, any future son she might have would inherit Mr. Brooke's wealth too. Of course, the Brooke sisters were expected to make good marriages to rich men who owned land and a big house and many servants. The girls lived. So here is the narrator talking. So he's giving or she is giving here a lot of information about the characters, as you can see. The girls' lives would be spent looking after their husbands and later on their children. Neither of the girls was well educated. Very few women received a good education in 1829. Yet everyone agreed Dorothea was clever. She was beautiful too, with long dark hair and large dark eyes. She always dressed very plainly, and she wore her hair in an old-fashioned way, but somehow that only made her look even more lovely. Dorothea had very strong opinions about many things, and she sometimes had strange ideas too. She wanted to use her mind and think of herself, but she also tried to learn as much as she could from other people. She wanted to use her money to make the little world of Middlemarch a better place. So Middlemarch, as I mentioned in the introduction podcast, in the podcast episode, um, Middlemarch is inspired by Coventry, the town of Coventry, where George Eliot lived when she was a young woman. So Middlemarch is a made-up name, but it's inspired from the town of Coventry, which was a small place at the time. Now it's a much bigger city. Celia Brooke was very pretty, with light brown hair and brown eyes. She enjoyed wearing fashionable clothes and curling her hair. She was not as serious as her elder sister, but everyone said that Celia was more sensible than the beautiful Dorothea. Mr. Brooke, Mr. Brooke had invited two guests to dinner that evening. The Reverend Mr. Casaubon of Lowick Manor, who was a scholar. So in this edition, the vocabulary here is not highlighted, which shows it's an older version, because now in the more recent guided readers, the vocabulary is highlighted, is in bold, and you have the note, you have a number next to the word. So if you want to have more information about this word, you can find the glossary at the back here, and you look at the number and you will find your word. So here you've got the word scholar, who means that he's professor at university. He's an educated man. So Mr. Brooke had invited two guests to dinner that evening. The Reverend Mr. Casaubon of Lowick Manor, who was a scholar, and Sir James Chatham, who lived at Freshitt Hall. So Freshitt is the name of a town, maybe a little hamlet or around Middlemarch. Yeah, another town next to Middlemarch. Celia wore the amethysts with her new white dress, and she looked very pretty. Dorothea did not wear any jewelry, and her dress, as usual, was very plain, but this made her look more beautiful than ever. Sir James was a handsome young man who was often a guest at Tipton Grange. So remember, Tipton Grange is where Mr. Brooke and the girls live. So there are a lot of different places, but so that's why I make a pause and explain here. And Freshitt Hall is where Sir James Chatham lives, a town nearby. So Sir James was a handsome young man who was often a guest at Tipton Grange. Like Mr. Brooke, Sir James owned a large estate and a fine house. And like Mr. Brooke, Sir James was a very wealthy man. Wealthy means also rich. Yeah. He had decided that he would ask Dorothea to marry him, and he was sure that she would say yes. Mr. Brooke was fond of his young neighbour, and he hoped that Dorothea would agree. However, Dorothea was not at all interested in Sir James. She believed that he came to Tipton to see her sister Celia. Dorothea did think of marriage, of course, but not to a young man. Her idea of a husband was an intelligent, older man who would guide her and teach her like a father. Dorothea had never met Mr. Casaubon before, but she had immediately become interested in his serious conversation. By the side of Sir James, Mr. Casaubon looked old and pale. His hair was partly grey, and his eyes had deep shadows under them. But Dorothea, listening to the older man's slow, careful voice, took no notice of these things. In answer to a question from Mr. Brooke, Mr. Casaubon was speaking about his own work. "I'm happy to tell you about it," he said with a smile. "I have been studying the subject for many years. In preparation, I have read all the Latin and Greek authors, and others too, of course. My aim is to put together all the greatest thoughts on the myth and world religions. I plan to show that they are all part of the same knowledge, of one great plan. My book will be called The Key to All Mythologies." Then Mr. Casaubon sighed. "I still have a great deal of information to put in order before I start writing the book," he added. "My health is not always good, and I sometimes think that I will die before my work is finished." "That would be terrible," Dorothea said quickly. "Perhaps you need a secretary to help you arrange your notes. I try to put my uncle's papers in order sometimes, but he won't let me." "Well, a woman's mind—" Oh, sorry, that's Mr. Brooke talking here. "Well, a woman's mind, you know," Mr. Brooke said with a laugh. "Women are not trained to do these things, are they, Mr. Casaubon?" When the two girls were alone after dinner, Celia said, "How very ugly Mr. Casaubon is, with his pale face and thin grey hair. He must be at least 45 years old. He moves his head up and down when he speaks, and his voice is so unpleasant." "You mustn't talk about Mr. Casaubon like that, Celia," Dorothea cried. "He is a scholar and he has a very fine mind. I wish that I could help him with his work." "To do that, you would have to marry him. What would Sir James Chatham think about that?" said Celia replied with a smile. "Sir James? What do you mean?" Dorothea asked quickly. "You know what I mean, Dorothea. Sir James wants to marry you," her sister replied. "Why do you think that he visits our uncle so often? And why he is so interested in your drawings for the new cottages in Freshitt Village? I know that you are very clever, Dorothea, but you don't understand people at all." So that's the end of chapter 1. And now we're going to move on with chapter 2. So you can already see the differences in characters between Dorothea and her sister Celia, and the different aspirations of both. 2 letters, chapter 2. Mr. Brooke enjoyed talking to Mr. Casaubon, and he invited him to stay for a short time. Both men were bachelors. So bachelors, if you're not familiar with the word, means that they are both single. That are they in a way that they've never married. And when he went to Tipton Grange, Mr. Casaubon had no thought of getting married. But before he left, he had several conversations with Dorothea. Mr. Casaubon did most of the talking, of course. But Dorothea listened to him with the greatest of pleasure, and he was flattered by her attention, of course. Slowly, and it's still the case, I guess, nowadays, how man likes to speak. Well, certain men like to speak and be listened to. And Slowly, the idea of sharing his life and work with a lively and interesting young woman began to enter Mr. Casaubon's mind. A week or two later, Mr. Brooke was invited to Lowick Manor, where Mr. Casaubon lived. The house was old and rather dark, but the gardens and grounds were very pleasant. When he returned home, Mr. Brooke went into his library and he was pleased to see Dorothea reading there. Come nearer the fire, my dear. It is cold today, Mr. Brooke said with a smile. I've been to Lowick, you know. I had lunch with Casaubon and I had a look at his library too. Lowick is a big house, and I think Casaubon is lonely. He needs a companion. It would be a great honor for anyone, for any woman, to be that companion, Dorothea replied. Her uncle looked at his niece in surprise. So, you like him then, my dear? He said. Casaubon has a very high opinion of you, a very high opinion, he repeated slowly. So this is his way of speaking in a novel. He likes to say, you know, and repeating himself, the end of his sentences, usually. Dorothea did not reply. Well, Casaubon has told me that he wants to marry you, Mr. Brooke said at last. Then he sighed. I told him that I had no idea what you thought about that, he went on. Of course, you will marry one day, but he's over 45, you know, and his health is not very good. You're not yet 20. I would have to agree to the marriage. What do you think about it, my dear? If Mr. Caswell makes me an offer, I shall accept him, Dorothea said in her clear voice. I admire and honor him. I'm very grateful to Mr. Casaubon. Well, he's a wealthy man with a fine estate, Mr. Brooke said. I want you to make a good marriage, of course. But Sir James also wants to marry you, you know. He's rich too, and much younger than Casaubon. I could never marry Sir James Chatham, Dorothea said quickly. Mr. Brooke shook his head sadly and sighed again. Women were so difficult to understand. I see that you have made up your mind, he said. Well, I have a letter from Casaubon for you. Here it is. Read it carefully and don't answer it until you're sure of your feelings. Dorothea took the letter from her uncle and hurried to her room. The letter was very long, but there was no word of love in it. Edward Casaubon saw Dorothea as a useful companion, someone who would help him complete his life's work. He wrote of his own hopes and said nothing about Dorothea's feelings. But to Dorothea, the letter opened a door to a new world. It was a world where she could do some good and help someone more intelligent than herself. She was happy and proud that this great man had chosen her. She's the chosen one. And of course, she doesn't realize that in a way, Casaubon is taking advantage of her admiration towards him and his work. And she, yeah. So Dorothea, so she was happy and proud that this great man had chosen her. Dorothea sat down at once to answer his letter, and her reply was short and clear. She was very grateful, and she promised to give her whole life to Mr. Casaubon and his work. She rewrote her letter several times until her writing could be read very easily. Oh, that's why I wanted to this is something I wanted to to say as well is that in the book, well, during the discussion workshop, this that's going to happen this Saturday, I will make sure I will take the time because we'll have more time now. It's just a guided reading, so I just focus on the reading of the of that text of this adaptation. But what I like to do in the discussion workshop is also read some extract from the original text, especially when we're discussing about a specific passage in the novel, which is nice to see how they've adapted that passage into the adaptation, but also to really get the way the way George Eliot or the way the author really because here we don't have the letter or we don't, yeah, it's not detailed, but in the novel we have more information about that letter and what he says in it and the way he says it. So here it just says that there was no word of love in it, and the fact that he just want Dorothea as someone that could help him in his work and someone useful, not someone that he is in love with. So that's what I like to do as well in discussion workshops, so that we have a little bit of an idea of what it's like, how it's written in the book, in the original text as well. So if that's something that you look for in the book club, then that's great because it's what we do. Right. So let's continue. So she rewrote her letter several times until her writing could be read very easily. When she gave the letter to her uncle an hour or so later, he looked at it in some surprise. "Have you thought enough about this, my dear?" he asked in a kind voice. "There was no need to think. I know my own mind," Dorothea replied. Dorothea said nothing to her sister that day, but Celia noticed that Dorothea was looking very happy. The next day, Mr. Brooke received a letter at lunchtime. "It is from Casaubon." It's him talking. "It is from Casaubon," he said to Dorothea. "He is coming to dinner tonight." Celia looked at Dorothea and was very surprised to see that her sister was blushing. For the first time, Celia began to feel suspicious that there was something more between her sister and Mr. Casaubon than scholarly conversation. Later on, when the sisters were in their sitting room, Celia said very quietly, "Is anyone else coming to dinner with Mr. Casaubon tonight?" "No, I don't think so," Dorothea replied. "That's a pity," Celia said with a quiet laugh. "We shall all hear him scraping his spoon and his plate when he's drinking his soup. When he drinks his soup, he makes such a horrible noise, Dorothea. You must have noticed it." Dorothea stood up and walked slowly across the room. Then she turned and looked at her sister. "Please, don't speak about Mr. Casaubon like that, Celia," she said in a clear, serious voice. "It is right to tell you that I am engaged to be married to him." Immediately, Celia went very pale, and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my dear, I hope that you will be very happy," she said gently. "I did not mean to say anything to hurt you. But why Mr. Casaubon? How can you think of marrying him?" I would ask why. I would ask, why can you think of marrying me?" Dorothea replied. "Mr. Casaubon has a great mind, Celia, and he has chosen me to help him in his life's work. I had hoped that you would understand." "I will try," Celia promised sadly. That evening, Dorothea did her best to show Mr. Casaubon how happy she was. She listened carefully to every word he said and asked several questions about his work. Mr. Caswell was delighted. My dear Miss Brooke, Dorothea, my dear Miss Brooke, Dorothea, he said, you have all the best qualities of women, and you're interested in my ideas, too. You will help me complete my great work, and you will complete my life, too, with your simple trust in me. I thank you. And so they were both satisfied. Dorothea wanted to be good enough for Mr. Casaubon, and he hoped that she would be good enough for him. They both agreed that the marriage would take place in 6 weeks' time. The people of Middlemarch were very surprised when they heard the news, and everyone thought that it was very strange. All Mr. Brooke's friends agreed that he should have stopped Dorothea from taking such an unusual decision. Sir James Chatham was shocked and angry. Why has a boring old bachelor like Casaubon decided to marry at his age? The young man cried. And why has a beautiful young girl like Dorothea agreed to marry him? Doesn't understand here. But Sir James said nothing to Dorothea herself. He went on helping her with the plans for the new cottages in Freshitt village. Whenever Sir James visited Tipton Grange, he slowly began to notice that Celia was much more sensible than her sister, and she was very pretty too. So maybe Sir James might console himself with the sister. Right. Chapter 3, Middlemarch. Middlemarch was a small town in the middle of England. In 1829, when this story begins, England was beginning to change in many ways. But these changes were slow in coming to Middlemarch. The people there preferred the old ways, and they did not like change at all. The manufacturers, the tradesmen, and the farmers all knew each other, and many of them belonged to the same families. They respected wealthy people like the Brookes, who owned land and lived in the big houses outside the town. But they gossiped about them too. The people of Middlemarch often laughed at Mr. Brooke and his unusual political ideas. They did not understand his niece, Dorothea, either, and her coming marriage to Mr. Casaubon surprised them very much. The people of Middlemarch waited to see what would happen next. Dorothea knew nothing of this gossip as she prepared herself for married life. One grey November day, Dorothea went with her sister and her uncle to Lowick to see her new home. Oh dear, Celia said to herself as the carriage stopped outside the house. What a dull, dark place Lowick Manor is. Freshitt Hall, where Sir James lives, is much more pleasant. But Dorothea was delighted with everything at Lowick Manor. Here she would live as Mr. Casaubon's wife. Here she could be happy and useful. She saw nothing that she wanted to change, and that pleased Mr. Casaubon very much. Perhaps you would like to choose a sitting room for yourself, my dear, Mr. Casaubon said with a smile and a nod of his head. Oh, any room will do, Dorothea replied. You must decide for me. There is a room upstairs, said Celia quickly. It has such a big window with a lovely view of the gardens. Mr. Casaubon smiled again and nodded his head. A very good choice, he replied, leading the way. All his visitors followed him upstairs. Mr. Casaubon walked along a corridor, opened a door, and said quietly, This was my mother's room, Dorothea. She was always happy here, and I hope you will be too. The furniture is a little old-fashioned now. I can change anything you like. No, it is beautiful, Dorothea cried. I don't want you to waste your money on buying new things for me. I don't want to change anything at all. She moved about the room and stopped before some little portraits. This must be your mother's picture. Yeah, you have shown me one like it downstairs, she said. And who is this? That is her elder sister, my Aunt Julia, Mr. Casaubon answered. You have not mentioned her before, Dorothea said. She has an interesting face. Mhm. It is a very pretty one. It is a very pretty one, Celia said, with those grey eyes and brown curly hair. She made an unfortunate marriage. I never met her, Casaubon said quietly. Why don't we walk in the gardens now? They all walked slowly between two lines of trees to the little church where Casaubon preached every Sunday. Then they returned to the house by a different way. Who's that young man over there? Mr. Brooke asked. He's sketching that tree, I think. Let's go and have a look, my dears. He walked towards the tree, and the young man who was drawing it. Mr. Casaubon did not look very pleased. That is my cousin, Mr. Will Ladislaw, Mr. Casaubon replied. He's the grandson of my Aunt Julia. He's staying here at Lowick for a short time. The young man stood up as they all walked towards him. He was very handsome, with the same grey eyes and brown curly hair as the portrait. Dorothea, Dorothea, let me introduce you to my cousin, Mr. Ladislaw, Casaubon said. Well, this is Miss Brooke. I have told you about her, and this is her sister, Celia. Will Ladislaw bowed. But he did not smile. Instead, he looked at Dorothea coldly. Will had already made up his mind. Any girl who was going to marry his unpleasant cousin Edward Casaubon must be unpleasant too. However beautiful she was. After Mr. Casaubon had introduced him to Will Ladislaw, Mr. Brooke began chatting in his usual way. You're an artist, I see, he said to Will. No, I just draw a little, the young man replied. And so did I when I was your age, Mr. Brooke said cheerfully. I could have been an artist if I had worked harder. I collected pictures too when I was on my travels. You must come to my house, Tipton Grange, and look at them. My nieces have never learned anything about art. They're not interested in my pictures at all. I would like you to give me your opinion of them. So here's a little drawing of this meeting. So we've got here Dorothea, Mr. Casaubon here. We can see it's an old face. And the young and handsome Will Ladislaw here with his book sketches, book sketches, sorry. And we've got the young Celia and Mr. Brooke here, as you can imagine. Well, thank you. I would like to see your pictures, Will replied. I think it is time to get back to the house now, Casaubon said. The young ladies will be tired of standing. He walked with his guests towards the house, and Will sat down and began sketching again. But after a few moments, he put down his pencil and laughed. How strange people are, he said to himself. My cousin Casaubon, who is going to marry that beautiful girl, and Miss Brooke herself, who knows nothing about art, and her uncle, who thinks he knows so much. What is that young man planning to do with his life? Brooke said. That Mr. Brooke, yeah. What is this young man planning to do with his life? Brooke asked Casaubon as they walked along. He draws well, you know. Oh, it's still Brooke, sorry. He draws well, you know. Will finds it difficult to settle on anything, Casaubon replied coldly. He will not be in Middlemarch for very long. He went to a good school, which I pay for, but he refused to go to an English university. He went to study in Germany instead. I believe that he now wants to go abroad again. Mr. Casaubon sighed. I've worked very hard all my life, he said, but Will does not want to follow my example, I'm afraid. I've given him enough money to live on for a year or so. Then we will see. That is very kind of you, and patient too, Dorothea said with a smile. We must all try to be patient with one another, I think. I do hope your cousin will settle down soon. But Will Ladislow was too impatient to stay in Middlemarch. Any longer. 6 days later, he left for Europe, and the people of Middlemarch, who did not welcome strangers, soon forgot about him. In a few weeks, Dorothea Brooke and Mr. Edward Casaubon were married, and on their way to Rome for their honeymoon, Mr. Casaubon very much wanted to look at some old manuscripts in the Vatican Library. It's going to be a very interesting honeymoon, as you will read, not in the next chapter, yeah, but in the following one. We'll read more about this honeymoon. Okay, chapter 4, Dr. Lydgate. Some time before this, the people of Middlemarch had been gossiping about another young stranger, a good-looking young man with thick dark hair and dark eyes. He was a doctor, and he came from a good family in the north of England. His name was Tertius Lydgate. He was young, poor, and ambitious. Dr. Lydgate had chosen to live and work in Middlemarch for a very good reason. He had studied hard in Paris and London to become a surgeon, and he was interested in all the latest medical ideas. Now, he wanted to work in a small town where he could use these ideas to help people. He wanted to get to know his patients, especially the poor ones. The people of Middlemarch did not like new ideas, but Dr. Lydgate was very sympathetic. He listened to his patients and asked them sensible questions about their illnesses. His ideas seemed strange, but most of his patients got better. Mr. Bulstrode, a rich banker who had lived in Middlemarch for many years, spoke to Mr. Brooke about the young doctor. Lydgate is an interesting young man, Bulstrode said. I believe that you know his family. Not exactly, Mr. Brooke replied, but his uncle, the baronet, sent me a letter about him. Lydgate is clever. He studied in Paris, you know. He has lots of new ideas, fresh air, diet, that kind of thing. Middlemarch doctors are very old-fashioned, Mr. Bulstrode said. We should welcome Dr. Lydgate to our town. He might be interested in my ideas for the new hospital. He might like to work there, too. I must speak to him about it. Lydgate was soon invited into the homes of several Middlemarch families, including Tipton Grange. Remember, that's the house, Mr. Brooke's house. Where he met Dorothea Brooke. She told him her ideas for helping the poor people of the neighborhood. Miss Brooke is a fine-looking girl, Lydgate said to himself as he made his way home. But she has too many questions. She's too serious for me. Her ideas are good, but she does not always think clearly. She will be happy with Mr. Casaubon, I think. He will be her teacher as well as her husband. Lydgate was also invited to the home of the Vinceys, a manufacturing family who lived in the centre of the town. The Vinceys were related to nearly all the respectable families in Middlemarch. Mr. Vince's sister was married to Mr. Bulstrode, the rich banker. The Vinceys were not as rich as important as the Brookes, and they were never invited to Tipton Grange. And there is here a clear division between noble people, so the rich people coming from the noble background, coming from a noble background, noble tea, sorry. And people and rich family who earned their money from trade, from manufacturing. So that here you can see this division. But the Vinceys had always worked hard, and they were well respected in the town. Rosamond Vincy, their daughter, was the most beautiful girl in Middlemarch. She was tall, with an elegant figure. She had dark blue eyes and pale blonde hair. She had been to fashionable school, but had learned little. But had learned little more than how to play the piano, sing, and embroider neatly. So embroidery, it's you've got a note here in the text. So I can read it to you. So embroidery, or to embroider, is to decorate clothes with a design of colored stitches. The activity of decorating clothes with colored stitches is called embroidery. That's an example. So she had dark blue eyes and pale, so she went to the school where she just learned how to play and sing in embroidery. All the young men in Middlemarch were in love with Rosamond, but she was not interested in any of them. Rosamond had marriage plans, of course. She planned to marry a rich man. She planned to marry a rich, ambitious, and handsome man from a good family who would admire her beauty and give her everything that she wanted. How can I find that young man in Middlemarch? Rosamond would ask herself with a sigh. But when Dr. Lydgate came to live in the town, Rosamond Vincy thought she had found her perfect husband, and she soon found out but she soon found out all she could about him. I'd like to know Dr. Lydgate. You must ask him to dinner, Mamma, Rosamond told her mother. Dr. Lydgate is very clever, everyone says so, and his uncle is a baronet too. She's also very interested in that. He sounds like an interesting young man, Mrs. Vincy said with a smile. I think that we would all like to meet him. And so Tertius Lydgate met Rosamond Vincy. Rosamond knew the power of her own beauty. She was not surprised to see the look of admiration on the young doctor's face when he saw her for the first time. They sat next to each other at dinner and were soon talking happily together. How lovely she is, he said to himself. And to Rosamond he added, You would let me hear you play the piano tonight, I hope. And you will sing too, perhaps? Rosamond smiled. That will stop my brother Fred from trying to play, she said. He's a very bad musician indeed. Fred Vincy was sitting on the other side of the table. Thank you, Rosie, he said. I suppose you will tell Lydgate that I'm a bad scholar too. Well, if you left Oxford without taking your degree, well, sorry, yeah, there is no if. Well, you left Oxford without taking your degree, Rosamond said. What are your plans now? So in the novel, it's very funny how the dialogues between Rosamond and her brother, they're always teasing each other and arguing as well. I shall go back to my college and this time I'll work hard and get my degree, Fred replied. Mary Garth will never forgive me if I don't. Who's Mary Garth? Lydgate asked Rosamond quietly. Rosamond turned her head gracefully and smiled. The Garths are a farming family, she replied. They are rather poor, so Mary has to work. She is a dear girl and a very good friend of mine, but no one can say that she's beautiful. Mary's short and plain, but my handsome, lazy brother says that he loves her. And so I do, Fred Vincy said. I have loved her all my life, and I think she loves me too. Mary Garth is sensible and good-natured, which is better than being beautiful, Rosie. Rosamond laughed. I'm not sure about that, she said, but she certainly has to work hard, and only a good-natured girl could look after our Uncle Peter, Mr. Peter Featherstone. Mary is the housekeeper at Stone Court, where he lives. I don't think that I have met Mr. Featherstone, Lydgate said. He's old and very ill, Rosamond explained. So you may be called to Stone Court any day soon, Dr. Lydgate. But be careful. Uncle Peter is very bad temper, isn't he, Fred? And very rich too, Fred replied. I hope that he leaves us a lot of money when he dies. I go to Stone Court to see him when I can. And to see Mary Garth too, his sister said, and her brother laughed. After dinner, Rosamond played the piano as she had promised. Lydgate was very fond of music, and his admiration for the beautiful girl grew with every note she played. She sang too, and by the end of the evening, Lydgate was very happy that he had decided to live in Middlemarch. As Rosamond sat down beside him again, she said, Do you dance, Dr. Lydgate? Or perhaps clever men like you never dance? I would be happy to dance with you, Miss Vincy, Lydgate said. Rosamond laughed. We do sometimes have dancing in the evenings, she said. I wasn't sure if you would come or not. I would come if you would be my partner, Lydgate replied. That would make me very happy to hear his flirting openly with her. Rosamond smiled. She had already made up her mind to marry the handsome young doctor, and as she was used to getting her own way, she was sure that she would succeed. On his way home, Lydgate thought of Rosamond Vincy. He felt quite safe from her charm and her beauty. Though he believed that Rosamond Vincy would make someone the perfect wife. Though he believed that Rosamond Vincy would make someone the perfect wife, Lydgate knew that he could not afford to marry for several years. At the moment, he had more important plans, like looking into new research on cholera, a subject that he was very interested in. Lydgate loved his work, and the development of his skills as a doctor was the most important thing in his life. For Rosamond, the evening had a different meaning. She had chosen Tertius Lydgate to be her husband. She remembered every look and word of his throughout the evening. She was sure that he was in love with her. He was handsome and clever, And best of all, the young doctor came from a good family. His uncle was a baronet. When I am married to Tertius, I will take my place in the very best Middlemarch society, Rosamond thought to herself. When Tertius is rich and famous, everyone will forget that I used to be Rosamond Vincy, whose father was only a manufacturer. It was true that Tertius Lydgate was not rich yet, but he was very ambitious. Rosamond was sure that he would be very successful as the clever young doctor's elegant and beautiful wife. Rosamond would be admired by society, and their lives together would be very happy. These were Rosamond's dreams, and she was determined to make them come true. So the beautiful girl played the piano and sang happily and took care always to look her best. She read romantic novels and poems about love and prepared for a perfect future with a perfect husband. And that's the end of chapter 4. So I hope you enjoyed this first guided reading session of Middlemarch, the adaptation, the B2 adaptation of Middlemarch. Make sure that you join us this Saturday, the 17th of May, to discuss these chapters more in depth and question yourself around the characters' personality and the overall plot of the novel. So we will discuss these chapters 1 to 4 we read today, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. Our next guided reading will be in 2 weeks on Wednesday, the 28th of May, at 11 a.m. Central European Time, to read chapters 5 to 8. So again, 4 chapters. So we have a little break. I'm going away next week, and I'll be back of course, very soon to continue the reading. And in the meantime, I wish you a beautiful end of the day. Bye-bye.